Thank you, and a big hello from London. Some interesting weekly patterns last week in various markets. In this instance, I'll start with stock indexes and stock index futures. And we had a weekly key reversal down last week in the UK FTSE futures, which have seen a strong reactionary move back up this week based on the stalwart of this market, the green short medium moving average, currently at 96.59, which has not only caused a strong pull higher, but one that has exceeded last week's range and made the highest high since mid-November. This green short medium moving average has held up the market very effectively, channeling it higher since early May, and deserves to be closely watched, especially after it single-handedly held up prices last week. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said to the next stock index, the NASDAQ composite, which had a weekly key reversal down last week, which has seen a follow-on lower this week. This is also true for the NASDAQ 100 index, which had a weekly key reversal down last week and has also seen a follow-on lower this week. There was also a weekly key reversal down last week in GameStop, GME, of the US last week. This week, well, we seemingly started off trying to head lower, but then prices turned higher and we're back within the main body of last week's range, which is interesting as we had a gapping move lower last week between 22 and 3/8 and 23 even, which the market has seemingly been trying to fill. Over now to the currencies, and we had a weekly key reversal down in US dollar against the Swiss franc last week, which, well, we really had nothing happen since, with prices spinning around last Friday's close. I suppose this could also apply to US dollar against the Singapore dollar, which also had a weekly key reversal down last week, and indeed had a follow-on lower at the start of this week, but we have since recovered back up to around last Friday's close. Then there is US dollar against the Korean won. In the US dollar Korean won, we had a weekly key reversal up last week towards the highs of the market this year, but we had an immediate reactionary move back down on Monday of this week that dipped below the whole range of last week, followed by a counter-reactionary move back up yesterday and today, such that today we have pushed up higher than last week. This is set up this week with only half the week gone to possibly be a compound weekly key reversal. Thus, if we close on Friday night either over 1475 or under 1473, then we'd be on. And that would be for a compound, if we close above it, for a compound weekly key reversal up, if higher than that range. Or immediate countering weekly key reversal down if lower than that range. Anything in between, and I do realize it is a fine narrow range in between, would be a lesser outside week. As I say, at this moment we are looking at a compound weekly key reversal up, but we still have 2.5 days to go. In a lesser currency, we had a weekly key reversal down last week in US dollar against the Macedonian dinar. This has seen a suitable follow-on lower this week. Finally, in the currencies, we had an interesting pair. We had a weekly key reversal down last week in the US dollar CNY, the onshore Chinese yuan, but the 1-month NDF, which we have seen some small attempts lower this week. And in US dollar CNY, the onshore Chinese yuan, the 1-year NDF, in which we have also seen some small attempts lower into new levels not seen since late 2024. Over to the commodities, and there were only two that had such weekly patterns. We had a weekly key reversal up last week in New York cotton futures, though this included a changeover, so it should be treated carefully. Here we saw a small attempt higher on the Monday, but prices have since slipped back within last week's true range. We also had a weekly key reversal up in New York FCOJ, the orange juice futures, as prices accelerated up from the lows seen in late November. We've seen a pretty good follow-on higher this week, though we're now approaching some moving average resistances, as well as lows from late October and early November. As always, I'm happy to answer any direct questions with anyone who's interested. And with that, I'll finish this section from London, and I hope that you found these comments useful.
Thank you for listening and watching this broadcast. This weekly broadcast gives the essential market patterns and consequences. Please be aware of the risk disclaimer posted both at the front and at the back of this broadcast. The copyright is Eddie Tofpick and ADM Investor Services International Limited. And here comes the final important bit.